to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thank you for tuning in, as always. It's Thursday when I'm recording this, September 20th. In light of my guest this week, we had this conversation earlier last week. You're listening to this on Monday, the 24th. Had this chat on the 18th. On the show this week is a comedian, Patrick Hastie, who you may remember from episode 19, but he's a good friend of mine, and we have he reached back out and said he wanted to do the show again, and I was interested in talking to him to see where he's been, what he's been up to, and where he is mentally over the past 2 years since we first chatted. So if you like this episode, definitely go back and listen to the one I did with him previously, because that episode is your more like traditional autobiographical kind of interview. This one feels more of like a couple of comedians making plans, talking shop, and I think it's very informative. We talk a lot about setting up independent tours, which is something he's done quite a bit over the last few years. And we talk a lot about, in this episode, goals, which is something I've been thinking about lately in light of this chat I had with Patrick, and something I want to do and have been wanting to do for a while is to record a stand-up album. And I've decided that 2019 will be the year I do that. I'm going to start putting like some time and thought into preparations for how I can do that. And so stay tuned for that. I hope I'll let you guys know, because if you're a fan of this show, I would greatly appreciate the support. And sometimes that's just being there to laugh at jokes I've written. And me and Pat make some plans, some very public plans and goals, declarations that I'm putting out now. So now I'm trying to hold myself to them. So I really enjoyed this chat, and it's inspired me. So I hope if you're listening to it, you get inspired as well. So look forward to that. I want to also let you guys know, if you enjoyed the show, you can, of course, subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I guess, and Stitcher Radio. That's where we are located. And if you are listening to this on desktop, my RSS feed is provided by Libsyn, who I love. They don't sponsor me, but I have been with them for the 2 years I've been doing this show, and I've been very happy with them. So you can check it out there. And if you want me to come and perform in your city, you can hit me up on Twitter at Comic Will Carey, and my website, willcareyisfunny.com, which I need to update. I got some ideas for how I want that to look. So that's going to get revamped soon, but you can still go to willcareyisfunny.com, send me a message through the contact link. And let's go to my chat with Patrick Hastie, my friend Patrick Hastie.
Because I can hear myself. Then if I had these off, I'll be louder. I won't pay attention. There's just a thing. It's like when you're listening to yourself, you're more like into it.
Yeah, and you can kind of like, you can keep track of like how loud your voice is. Mm-hmm. And again, I feel for doing radio stuff, there's a certain air of, compared to like if you're doing comedy like in a really tight comedy club, like if you're doing stand-up at the Comedy Cellar compared to doing it at an outdoor festival.
Sure, yeah.
It's a very different vibe.
Thing, yeah.
You gotta, you play differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a certain element of your surroundings affecting what you do.
And another thing that I've learned is, and Reem and I are bad about this, but we'll just talk over each other like crazy. And so because you were excited and you have a guest and you want to make it all fun, with earbuds, I'm way better, because like if you start talking and I don't have these on and you've got a mic over your face, I might not hear you go like, and then I'm just going to ramble over it. But and vice versa with probably everybody, but especially comics. But with these on, I can
get bits in.
I can hear you, and then I can know to fall back. And I think that's an important thing that it really upped our show once we started doing that.
Yeah. Well, I think podcasting, I have always thought I was a pretty good listener, and people have told me that. And I think podcasting kind of has helped me be better about that, because I don't do a ton of talking on the interview parts. Sometimes I do, and then sometimes I like to I try to set up people and then let them go.
Yeah. I think you're great. I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, especially I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts from people we know.
Right.
Just because I get so in my head.
Sure.
But I really like listening to yours. I think you're a good interviewer, and I think it's interesting because you've had a lot of guests on people that I'm good friends with. And it's interesting because like I was telling somebody about why I liked it, and I was like, you had Gideon on, and he was talking about coming up in Iowa, doing stand up in Iowa, doing stand up in Des Moines, moving to New York, starting Jackknife Comedy, going on the road, and I was like, I was with him that whole time, but I was never like gonna turn to him and be like, hey man, what are you thinking right now? You know, like I'm experiencing these things and I have my thoughts, but it was interesting to hear him talk about it from his own point of view. And just be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's what I was thinking, you know? Or like, oh, I didn't know that, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was really, I like that you got that. And if you would have just done like, you know, our other friends' podcasts, like ufology or something, I don't think I don't think I'd learn about my friends so much, you know?
Yeah. Well, even
though that's a great show.
Oh yeah, no, I like all of our friends that do like the kind of themed shows. Like I love stuff like that.
Yeah, me too.
I think that's really cool, and it's like a great way to kind of talk in depth about stuff that you probably don't get to talk about very often. For the thing I was thinking about, because I like had the idea, I wanted to do a podcast for so long, and I even had this stuff like Chelsea had gotten it for me before I actually started doing it. But the only thing I could think of is like I want to do like an interview show like Mark Maron or Pete Holmes, and I guess there's a certain quality and to maybe sound like the more like cynical showbiz kind of thought, it is harder to get people, I think, to listen to a show, interview show with someone that they haven't heard of. So unless it's a topic that they're close to.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I feel like it's easier for people to listen to a pop culture thing, even if they haven't heard of someone, but there's just like so many like movie review podcasts and like current event podcasts.
And that's what our, like with my show is like, we're nostalgic. We talk about growing up. It's such, there's a built-in market for it. And so then when we have our friends that are guests on, that may be a comedian that's not famous or that nobody really knows, we have listeners that'll listen because they don't know this comic, but they know The Lion King and they know Mario and all the stuff we're going to talk about.
Right.
But the catch-22 of that is 70 episodes of just talking about the goddamn Rugrats over and over is so boring. And so when our show is best when it becomes something totally different, you know?
Yeah.
We talked to Abby Rosenquist about anxiety and like how growing up and playing sports and how all the good things it does to you, but then also like all the kind of ways it makes you're different and how competition's wonderful, but it also kind of is weird. And then when you get into the real world and stuff, and it was so interesting because all three of us had like dealt with that, and we were all, and we had this whole conversation. I don't even think we ever mentioned Tommy Pickles, you know?
Yeah, so that just becomes a jumping off point. It's funny you bring that up because I know that I think you're pretty open about your anxiety issues and panic attacks that you have.
Yeah, baby.
And to the point where you don't drink caffeine.
Oh no, I only drink caffeine.
You only drink caffeine,
I don't drink booze.
You don't drink booze. That's what I was thinking. And soda. I knew that. Yeah. So we were talking about this a little bit the last time, that sort of anxiety to create something. And I definitely have gone through my periods with that in comedy where I've definitely thought, I'm not doing enough. I'm not going to be successful. I'm going to just keep being sad.
Yeah.
There's a lot of what I am continuously trying to run away from by creating things. And I kind of wanted to go back to this because you had this music thing you wanted to do the last time that you were on the show, and you're right. I did get really excited about that because like,
I think it's the thing with it, and when I was saying, I don't think what I was saying before, I don't know if we were recording yet, but what I was saying was,
we have been for like 5 minutes.
Oh, great. I don't know if I seemed very, when I listened back to it today, I was like, wow, I'm really stoked about this thing that I literally must have forgotten a week later. And that is who I am. I will come up with an idea for a movie and I will write the treatment. And then 3 days later, I'll write a new joke on stage. And then I don't care about the last thing anymore. So that's kind of how my brain works. And then music is still a huge thing to me. But like like when I was listening back to that, the whole like first 3/4 of that first episode we did, like episode 19, it was like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it'd be interesting to come back, is because I feel my life is so different than it was then, even though it's on the paper, it's the similar, but like I've done so much comedically that it feels, like at that moment, that band thing, what that is that's me having a panic attack and needing to do something. And I probably wasn't booked on a lot of stuff. I probably didn't have any festivals coming up. And I definitely wasn't happy with my stand up at that moment, because as soon as I'm not happy on stage, I'm like, what else? Let's write a script. Let's start this. Let's write songs. Let's write a band. And so that's just that day we recorded, or that week, that's where I was.
No, I do that too.
Yeah.
And this will be interesting. We can kind of unpack this.
Sure.
Because I've in those 2 years I've been kind of following you, even though we don't hang out every single day.
No, but we're friends.
Yeah, we're friends.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'll say this sincerely, you are one of the friends that I think is so close to being very famous very soon. Oh my God. To the point where, like,
if you could tell everybody in Hollywood that, it would be the best.
Well, because like you are doing a lot of, you're doing these really cool festivals. You're doing these very cool shows. Your monthly show that I talked about with Gideon.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the most fun independent shows in New York.
That was very fun to hear him talk about that, because I have a lot. It's gross to talk about your own thing. Like it's not gross. In a setting like this, it's not.
Yeah.
But like, I can't like just go be like, I'm so proud of my fucking monthly show, you know? But it's so fun in a setting like this to hear Gideon talk about it and you reaffirm it. And I'm like, yeah, God damn it, we are doing something real and cool, you know?
No, you definitely are. Like, I think the last time I did it was like maybe like 2 or 3 years ago at this point.
Were you at the Creek when we did it?
I was at the Creek.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah,
So within the last 3 years.
Yeah, something like that. And it was one of like the best
It's
sets.
so fun.
It was a very fun show.
Yeah.
Like, stand up can be so fun.
Yeah, isn't that dumb? Sometimes it's good.
It's so dumb that like you don't want all the other nonsense to like take away that pure love of getting on stage, like arguing about like what if something doesn't fit what you think comedy is.
What is your process when you're doing a set that you're nervous about, or that you're like in your head about? Mm-hmm. Do you have a process to calm yourself down? Or when you have a great set, is there anything, do you do anything? Because like, I guess when I'm really nervous, I have such a hard time getting ready to, I know it'll work out, but I have this like couple minutes. And so what I've started doing is just trying to figure out the last time I had like a really fun set.
Yeah.
And just think about it as much as I can. And so now anytime I have one of those fun sets, I'm like, oh, this is the one I'm going to remember now. This, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'll have a really fun set, and I'll be like, oh, Patrick, remember this. Like, I'll mentally be like, as I get off stage, like, in 2 weeks when you're bombing or you're terrible, just remember that you have had fun once, you know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I guess.
No,
do you do the same kind of a thing, or how do you psych yourself up and
how do I psych
appreciate
myself up
it when
for
you
like
deserve
a
it?
big set? Well, what I do, and maybe this comes with a slight bit of arrogance. If I'm stressed out before a show that is going to be big, either like big audience wise or like maybe
or it could just be
an opportunity out of something.
You have new jokes that you really want to make work or something. Yeah, it could be like a small bad show, but you're nervous because you're putting stakes on the set.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think I know that I have jokes that are good. And even if they don't go over well, I know those jokes are good.
And that's an important trait.
I have that foundation. Whereas so that won't upset me because I know I've got a good chunk of jokes that are good. And I give myself the freedom to go on a riff on an idea if I want to try something new. Like when I did Raw Brand, I just had this like idea that I was going to do this riff about the guy who had the Bill Cosby touch.
Sure, yeah.
I give myself I'm like, I know I have this foundation I couldn't come back to. I'm gonna take this risk and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
And if it completely falls flat, I can go back to this material, and I know I can say something self-aggrandizing to at least make me look, to get the crowd back into it, because and not that I want to debate this stuff endlessly, but if I say something that like say I say something that is really messed up, and it kind of ruins the fun
tanks
vibe,
it,
I'll be like my own blogger and like slap myself on the wrists in front of everybody.
Yeah.
So that it's not like weird. I'm not gonna double down on
for
something
sure.
I shouldn't.
I've said things
is
like,
not worth doubling down on.
Yeah. I've done that because I'll just riff. Like I'll just start talking sometimes, and especially like if the laugh's getting there, I'll be chasing that laugh, and it's kind of like in the moment riffing. And every once in a while, I'll say something that I didn't. I don't know a good example, but like I'll say something that comes out like a horrific statement, but it's not a horrific statement. It's just my brain putting words together wrong.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh yeah, and then I followed her home, and then it comes off, and everybody's like, what the hell? And you're like, no, that's not what I meant. You guys get what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm saying like I'd be helpful, But like I've had that happen before too, and then I don't come from the school of like dig yourself a hole just to see if you can get out of it. But like I have dug myself some holes, and it's very fun sometimes trying to get yourself out. And then at a show like the weekly RAR Bar we were talking about, Sam Evans and I do that every week. There are times there where when I go up and host, and you'll do time in between sometimes, I'll be like, there's nothing. I'm done. Give it up for the bartender. And then just sometimes you lose. And I think that's so funny about comedy.
Yeah. Like you can be so fun. You can be so funny. And then you can, the thing that always boggles my mind is because we've both been in the city for a while, there's to the point where there's this whole like new class of kids that are like 5 years younger than us.
It's crazy.
That if they just saw us go up at their mic and doing new material, they might think, oh, these sad old people trying comedy for the first time. But they don't know like the 10 plus years that we've been putting into this.
And the thing, I think about that kind of shit all the time.
Me too.
Because I'll go to a mic sometime, and I'm nobody. Like you were very flattering before, but like I've got nothing. I don't have any money. I don't have any agents or anything like that. I'm not doing anything. I'm doing stuff my own that I'm pushing out there and stuff. But I know that I'm nobody. But I sometimes will go to a mic, and especially if I have like just a fine set, an okay set, and I don't recognize anyone in the room, I'm like, well, none of them recognize me either. Yeah. And so then I always think, what am I to them? And I think back to when I moved here, and I was like at an open mic, like a 2 Moons of the Creek, and I would see somebody who I didn't know. And I could be like, okay, is that person famous? Is that person? I think about it a lot, like Adam Newman, who's like a very successful comedian. He did Letterman and stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing him at 2 Moons once, and he was funny and everything. And at the end, I was just like, oh, I don't know this guy. He must have been just. And I talked to him for a second, and then like a minute later, somebody else was like, oh yeah, that guy's been on Letterman. But in the moment, I didn't know who he was. And so I'm just like, oh, this is just some guy who was pretty funny. And I always wonder about that. If anybody's looking at me being like, who the fuck? Not in the positive way, in the negative way, like, oh, who the fuck's this guy? And then a week later, it'd be like, oh, he's a real comic? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he like does the road, and he has this critically acclaimed show.
I think about that stuff a lot. Like, I think about, it's gross, but I think about, it's not so much my personal standing. I just think about the biography of comedy. Like of my biography of like where I'm at now compared to who comedians I really respect. Where were they at when they were at my level, and where were they at when they had been living in New York for 6 years? I think that kind of stuff is interesting so you can gauge where you're at.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that you can drive yourself insane a little bit doing that because we know comics that get like lots of TV credits in the first couple of years, but then there are comics I think of. The example I think of right now is like Bert Kreischer.
Sure.
Bert Kreischer is probably like in his 40s.
Yeah, like late 40s, I think.
And he's been a well-known comic for a while, like doing like the road and stuff. And he's now getting like his podcast is
huge.
really popular, and he's got this great new Netflix special. Like his Netflix special, like I just had like deep cathartic laughs of the kind I haven't had. I
haven't watched it yet. He's definitely made me laugh like that a few times.
Yeah.
He's a story. I like his stories.
He's got great stories,
and that's my thing.
He's the kind of comic that is a pure genuine good time.
Yeah, and fun. Yeah, that's what I like.
Yeah, a fun a fun club time.
Sure.
Is what I would think compared to comics that are maybe doing more experimental stuff. He, and I could think of a few other names. He's like a crusher club comedian.
Yeah.
And I love stuff.
And he's also like a business, like he's like comedy business. Like when he works clubs, he like raises, do you know this thing about how he like passes the hat for the staff?
I didn't know that, but that's wonderful.
He does this thing where like at the end of his set, like during the checks drop, when he's headlining, he'll hand out like a hat, and he'll be like, you put money in there, just keep putting money in there. And he'll like be like, his personality, but he'll be like, oh, come on, look at you, I know you got a good job, put more money in there, you can put more than that in there. And he'll have these like buckets at the end of the night that are like $1,500, $2,000. and then he'll just draw the staff's name out of a hat and then give all of it to one staff member. And so like this girl, it happened to one time at like some like the Dayton Funny Bone or something, I guess. And like this woman got like $3,000 and she was getting married like the next week. So it was just $3,000 to go on her honeymoon with. And it was all like luck of the draw and everything, right? And so and because of that, that's a great thing to do as a human, but it's also, that's making yourself look great for the club. He always has everybody get drinks after the show. It's like, he's good at the business side of it as well as a crusher on stage.
Exactly. Like he can do the art and then the business side of it. Like I think of like guys like him or like a guy like David Tell, like you're watching those and you're going to drink.
Yeah.
You're going to drink and that's good.
It sells booze and that makes, I mean, I still have no history with clubs or no like thing, but that's the thing that I know of is like, I mean, that's what like a comedy club is a place to perform comedy, but it's also a place to sell drinks and food and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like if you're known as the comic that's going to help sell out the bar the weekend you're there, the club's going to have you back, And some people I'm sure use that in the wrong way and stuff like that, but if you can be a great comic on stage and use that to your advantage, it's like
100%. Yeah, and I think you're going to grow into the club circuit because you and I, and you're doing a lot of what I wish I guess I had the free time to do.
You're too busy traveling Europe and stuff, right? Like that's what
Europe and Asia, and I do sets when I'm in those cities and countries, but like you're like sort of like, are you familiar with the website Book Your Own Life?
No, I don't know.
So
what this is.
It's this sort of like underground do-it-yourself punk rock bible of venues and house shows that
holy shit
punk bands have used for like years to like tour and set up tours. So you're doing.
Yeah, but I didn't know about this goddamn website. Now I'm going to use this website to set up a comedy show. I can send Facebook messages to bars that closed in 2007. Like I'm messed up.
Oh, dude,
this website sounds great.
You know what's something I've also done lately?
Huh?
And I keep track of places that people I know play, so that I can. So I'm like, okay, when my show, when I'm ready to tour and I'm ready to like do a weekend, I'll reach out to them. So I would love to talk a little bit about. And Gideon and talked a little bit about this also. I'd love to talk about the practical side of setting up your own tour, because you've done how many of your own tours at this point?
That I consider real tours. I've done 3 now. And that's the thing that I was excited, because I got in this habit of listening back to the show. And that's why I was thinking I wanted to come back on, because when we recorded before was in like early 2016.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that before. I'd done a couple, like you go out and you do 5 cities or whatever, and you're just on your way to a festival and you're jumping on shows. But it was 2016 is when I went on my first real tour with Albert and Nick. And we went, it was the Young Dinosaurs tour. We did 30 cities in 28 days. And then last year, Gideon Hambright and our friend James Doyle, we did like 36 shows in like 32 days or something. And then this summer, I did 2 weeks with my friend Matt Zemak, who's a great comic out of Tucson.
Yes.
And we did, this year we did like 18 shows in 2 weeks. Not as big of a thing.
Yeah.
But it's all learning. That's why I'm doing this, is because I want to know the right way to do it.
The 2 weeks idea sounds probably a little bit healthier for your
my
personal
wife.
life.
Yeah.
I would
my
think
dog.
Your dog, because I'm definitely thinking like that. Like if I were to just go to Chelsea's, like, hey, I'll see you in a month, she'd be like, you're gonna find somewhere else to live.
I'm an idiot. I remember when I came back last year, because last year was rough. The first time it was so fun, and it's very interesting because, like, okay, so the first time I did it with Albert and Nick, it was very exciting and fun, and also scary as hell, because the whole time you don't know you don't know if you're going to come back with money. Like I'm very, I keep track of money really well, and the logistics of the tour, not in my real life, but on the road.
Sure. Well, this is stuff I want to learn more about.
And so the first time, there's all these nerves of like, also, can I do this? I don't even know if I have enough time. I'm going to go to these other cities. These comics didn't even give a shit. And then also are we going to make money? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
And then when it ended and everything was, I'd call it a success. We ended up in the whatever. We made a little bit of money, not a lot, but we made a little bit of money.
You were in the black.
Yeah. We made what we put in plus a fair amount per comic. And then, last year when I went in 2017 with Gideon, it was like, the nerves were different, because then the nerves were like, okay, well, now I need to learn more about myself. Also, the first time I learned, I can do 30 minutes on the road. It's no big deal. It's easy. And my writing style in New York fits the road that I need to write. So it's like all the fears of that. So then the second time I go, I'm like, well, I got to learn something on this one too. And so like, then you're like, okay, well, I want to figure out how to make better money. I want to figure out how to make better money with merch that's cool. Figure out what cities are better than, what plans. And so then that was a whole learning thing. And then this year, my whole goal of just doing 2 weeks was I didn't want to have to go for a month. And what I was going to say was, after I got back last year, I ended in Des Moines at our friend's festival, the Des Moines Comedy Festival, or the Beast Village Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
And so 33 days on the road, just body dead, shows every night.
Yeah.
Then I roll into Des Moines at midnight, and all of my friends that I started comedy with are there. Plus, a bunch of New York comics got in last year. So like Nasser Khan, Kathy Humes, Brian Bahi was there. All of my LA friends were there. Chicago friends were there. And then this first night of the festival, I have this show at midnight. Then Mike Kaplan's there. Then all of my friends from high school show up because they all live in the area.
Yeah.
So like I'm having this moment on stage where I'm like, and I'm like the best I've ever been because I'm so tight from the road.
Yeah. This is like the set you have before you like collapse and die.
Literally, I was like, in my head, I was like, I bet I died in Cincinnati, or I'm in like a coma. And this is just my brain trying to be like, okay, let's make him happy. Where's he at? He's on stage in Des Moines. Okay, who's there? Everybody in his life. And like I literally started talking about it on stage, and I was like, I swear to God, if my mom walks in right now, I just put a wallet in my mouth so I don't bite my tongue off,
Right.
Because like
the idea of like your brain, the idea of like, I've heard that like some people think when you die, your brain just the life flashing before your eyes is your brain coping with the trauma that it's dying.
Yeah.
So you thought you were having that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so then I finally get home and I'm dead. I'm like, I went to I ended that tour pretty well. I went to my parents' house in Southwest Iowa, and I just laid on my parents' couch for 2 days before I came back to New York, and I just didn't do stand up. I didn't do nothing. To kind of because I grew up there once, I could grow up there again, in 2 days. And then I came back to New York, and I told Stacy right away, my wife, I was just like, I can't do another month unless I'm making good money and somebody else is setting it up. And so then this year I did 2 weeks, and I made good money, like the same, not good money, but the same.
You didn't lose money.
In this year in 2 weeks, I made the same amount of money I made last year in a month, which is just because I've learned more, right? And I know with better rooms, and we got better gigs and stuff. But
are you setting up, like Gideon was telling me about were you setting up like places with a guarantee?
Sometimes it all depends on where you go. One thing Gideon said in that episode that's very true, that I always tell everybody when they want to go do this stuff, is I've done a lot of festivals. I've done 20 comedy festivals over the last 8 years. And so like that's a lot.
Nice.
And so every time you go somewhere, you meet people and you gel with them. So then when I want to go to a city, and this is, I know people, but like I'm like, okay, let's see. I want to go to Flagstaff. So I just type into Facebook Flagstaff, and I see which comedian friends of mine. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, this girl I met on the road in Denver one year. She's in Flagstaff. Let's send her a message. And then she's like, well, I don't book anything, but this is the person that does. And then I got a place in Flagstaff. And so sometimes I'm setting up. Sometimes like in like a situation like that, you're setting up a door deal. But last year this last tour I just did, and mostly what I've always done has been, you want to I just pass buckets at the end, and you sell a little bit of merch and stuff, and then
you keep like the ticket price low or free.
Or free, and then at the end, but then some places, and it's like I was saying with the learning stuff.
Yeah.
When I go on the road next year, I'm not going to do that as much. Next year, I'm going to be asking for guarantees more because sometimes you'll go to a place and you'll work really hard and you'll do a great show and everything will be great, and you'll walk away with $150. Because that's what you got in the bucket, and that's what people bought stickers and stuff.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll go to a place, and it's you could have the exact same scenario in another city, and that place just made a door deal, and you make $300 in one night.
Yeah.
And then also you get to sell your merchy stuff, And so it's like, I think it's that whole thing about how comics don't ask for stuff. You don't ask to do shows because it feels gross, and you don't want to. You don't want to do this because I'm not ready, and I don't want to ask to do JFL because I don't want to ask to submit because you're. That feeling is in our heads, and that's the same thing I had with the road. Is I'm like, well, I don't want to fuck with them, I don't want to. Who do I think I am asking to get paid $200? And then you get paid $200 a few times, and you're like, oh, I'm a guy that should be getting paid $200.
Yeah. And that's a low enough. I think that's a low enough threshold where even if it's a wash, like the club isn't going to go out of business.
Sure.
And also, it's I think a fair amount. And then if more people show up, and then that's more people buying merch, it's more people selling drinks,
and just push. And I'm not saying I'm not a. I studied marketing in college. That's what my associate's degree is in. And so like I'm not at all. I don't even drink. I'm not going to be like nope. But I'm going to be like, hey, support the bar. Even if you're buying a bag of chips, we're doing this tonight. You guys are getting to have a good time because this bar let us. You know.
Yeah.
So it's like I'll do that and stuff like that. And a lot of times that's like where they're going to make their money off the bar, so they don't care if they pay you $300, you know. And it's also some places sometimes like a thing I learned this year was you go to a lot of big cities, right?
Yeah.
And so you go to because when you're on the road, you go to like some smaller places that are cool and fun, and you get paid a little bit more money, and you get to meet like some local comics. But then you go to a huge city like Austin, and you do all of the fun shows, and it's great. But those shows only pay like $5-10 sometimes, or sometimes nothing. But that's fine. It's like when you come to New York, you know, you don't always get paid to do these shows, but you're in a cool place with cool people. Well, so the last couple of years I've done. You go to New Orleans, you go to Austin, which I have some of my favorite people there. It's great.
Oh, but I've performed in Austin. It's
fantastic.
Did you ever meet Bryson Turner?
I know Bryson. Yeah.
Yeah.
He put out a special that I really loved.
I still haven't seen that. I'm sorry, Bryson, but
he's not listening. If he is, he has no idea who I am. I was at his special.
He used to live in Austin, and I like stayed with him for like a week. And,
cool!
And like we hung out and did shows. It's a great comedy city.
But the thing, as a touring comic, and maybe if I was smarter or if I had more credits, I could make some money there. But when you just stop in and do 4 or 5 fun shows, you're not going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
You maybe $20 for that. But you go to some cities, go to Denver, all of the shows pay. Yeah. So it's like last year on the tour with Gideon, we didn't go to Denver because we're like, that's fine, we'll hit it next time. But if we would have gone to Denver for 2 nights, we probably would have made an extra $200 on the tour, you know, or $300, you know, and that's a thing that I learned, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know that, and now I know that. And then another thing you can do too for this kind of stuff is like, I mean, I learned everything from afar. Kind of like you were talking about how you watch where your friends go so that when it's your turn, you can go out there and look at those rooms and stuff. Yeah. Dave Ross is a LA comic who's great. And like, I don't know. I think he's one of the funniest people ever. He was New Faces a couple years ago, but he's doing this all the time. Same thing with Ron Babcock. He's doing this all the time.
Yeah.
Emily Galati's doing this all the time. Like they're already going out there and they all have credits and stuff. They're a little upper class than we are.
Yeah.
But so I'm like, if I want to go to Albuquerque, I'm like, well, where did Dave play in Albuquerque? Okay, this bar. Okay, now where did Ron play? Okay, he played that bar too. So if I reach out to that bar, odds are they're into comedy, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's it's so smart to just, you know, and you don't even have to, I don't even email them. I just like can check their website and then, you know, and I'm not name dropping them, but it's like, I see you run comedy. It's like such a,
yeah, you can check like the submission form, but no, because I'm noticing that a lot too. Like if think of like Cameron Esposito or Dave Hill.
Yeah.
The guy who was that guy that was living in a van for a while.
For sure. Oh, Dave Stone.
Dave Stone. Sorry.
Dave Hill is also a great comic. Shreds. Yes. Speaking of guitars, he shreds.
Yeah. So it's cool to play like the cool bar in the city. Like it's not necessarily, you know, the goal. You don't necessarily have to wait till you can get into like the improv or the funny bone.
Yeah. Which is a great route that I wish I could have been on. I wish I was on that kick of where when I go to these towns, I'm just doing the funny bones and the improvs and everything's cool. But that's not the comedy path I took or that I ended up on. It's not like I ever made a decision.
Right.
I was never like,
well, you just,
you know.
Well, there's so much that you can control about your comedy career, and there's so much that you can't. So I started thinking more about this in the last couple of years when once my relationship started getting a little more serious, I started thinking a little more practically. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think I think it is healthy for everyone who wants to be in stand-up for a long time to have those couple of years of just hardcore grinding, just so that you have the comfort with holding a microphone and being on stage. You can get the formula of what a joke is into your brain.
And figure out who you are.
Figuring out who you are, yes. Because you can have like, I have favorite comedians that I'm nothing like.
Sure, yeah, totally.
Like Tim Dillon, Bill Burr, really make me laugh. I'm nothing like them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and but I am very aware, and you become aware after time. I don't know if anyone who's like super new to comedy will stumble upon this, but repetition, you do find who you are. Like the mystery of finding what your voice is just really being comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
And once I started realizing is like, okay, I am not a paid regular at 8 clubs in New York. So I'm not at that trajectory where I'm doing that kind of nightly grinding. But so what is my trajectory? Okay, podcasting. And you have this, I started doing Jake's storytelling mic. Okay, I have that skill because when I started, I could only do like really short one-liners.
Yeah.
So what can I do with a long-form story? I could build an hour around that. Finding these other avenues.
It's like kind of like you don't plan your comedy career. You don't plan the route you go, stuff like that, and you can't control it. But you can control what you're doing within the route you're on.
Yes.
So it's like totally. It's like when I came to New York, I thought I was really new at comedy, and I thought I was gonna go to the Gotham and get passed, and go to Eastville and get passed and stuff. And then I never even. I mean, I've only auditioned like twice, and it was never even like, you know what I mean? Like just not goof off, but like I was like right away. I was like, oh well, I have way more fun doing this other thing, and I have people that I started with at that same time who are much further along because they took that out. They're maybe more further along in these clubs, but I'm like, I feel fine with where I am. There's also like a real, I mean, like there are, like you were saying, like to figure out who you are and everything, you got to grind a lot, but that can mean a lot. Like you can like learning how to do a podcast in the right way and doing 2 podcasts a week and everything like that. And like, that's what my buddy Reem and I do. Like that's a thing. We are good at podcasting now because we worked really hard at it. But there are people who do a podcast laissez-faire every once in a while, and maybe they're not good at it, but that's fine. Like I don't know. It's like you can see grinding is to everybody in the same, like not the same thing. Like you don't have to be at open mics 15 times a week. You don't have to be hanging out at the stand every week. Those you can do that, but that doesn't have to be your grind as long as you're doing something.
Yes.
Like that's the fear is when like every once in a while somebody will pop up on Facebook, or when it happens weirdly is it's when somebody gets Instagram that I'm Facebook friends with but that I just haven't really seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And then they get Instagram and I'll get like a that's like your Facebook friend is on Instagram and it'll be a comic that I'm like, I haven't seen that person since 2014. And then you go look at their page and like it's like their statuses get like 12 likes, but they used to be getting hundreds of likes, and you're just like, oh, they just, and then you don't know what I don't know. I'm not going to investigate, but I'm like, what is it? Did they get in a relationship? Did they get a good job? Did they fall out of love with comedy? Are they a writer on Fallon? Like you don't know what it is, but I'm always so interested in that. That's when I feel like when you're not, you got to be working hard somehow.
Yeah.
But that can be different for everybody.
Yeah, that can be a bunch of different things. And going back to, again, this sort of like anxiety to create, I definitely found like when I was like, okay, open mics are killing my enjoyment of this. I'm not booked multiple times a week, but I can put a lot of energy into doing a podcast. Sure. So and then I started thinking about like so many comics, the comics we know that have big podcasts, like there's a way of like bringing people to you. Like you are building an audience. It's almost like being a cult leader in a kind of,
sure, in the best way,
in a kind of way. And then you can build that and then have that. And I started thinking about like, Chris Gethard or the Corinne Fisher and Christina Hutchinson, maybe, and thinking that could be my path. And then I, of course, have like bigger things I want to do. But then I start thinking, well, I can do stand-up when I'm booked and then enjoy it. I can record a podcast, and I have my long-term goals. So you have your short-term goals and your long-term goals. Yeah. And
goals are important.
It's all, and again, it's all working towards something. Like even if it doesn't feel like you're progressing, you are.
I think this episode is all over, but I really enjoy it. In my head, it's all over.
No, I
came
like
in with like.
Well, the thing is, we had this. We had the very formal, like I think, more autobiographical chat.
Yeah,
now
exactly.
We're doing the like.
But there's things that I specifically wanted to talk about because of what I've been thinking about lately, and then now my brain's. No, that's fine. I'm trying to. I feel bad for a listener who's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? But it's something that this is a thing that I'm on the tick of, is like I was saying, the grinding, it's different for everybody. As long as you're working, for you, I think as long as you're building this podcast and you're doing stand-up when you want to do stand-up, you're also living this fucking crazy life where you're going to Asia for a couple weeks, you know? Like everybody, so many people put, and maybe because we're both in like successful relationships, that's why I think we can think about it this way.
Yeah.
But like, I have a life outside of comedy too. Like my wife and I like travel and we, you know, we do stuff, we hang out, we watch TV together a lot and stuff like that. So it's like, don't make comedy all you have, but also kind of for a little bit you have to make it all you have, you know?
Yeah. Just to get your legs, and then you got to have something to talk about. That isn't comedy.
Are you a goal oriented person? Like, do you write your goals out and like look at them and stuff like that? Does that help you?
Yes, I make lists. I make what do I want to do this year, and I make what do I want to do next year kind of lists.
Cool.
So,
and is it a thing? Do you do it at the beginning of the year, every year, and stuff like that, or is it just like, you know?
I always do it at the beginning of the year, but then every now and then I'll have sort of like a moment where I'm like, I got to make a list of things to do.
That's
great. Then I'll list it out, and my script I've been working on, like I'll sometimes send my friend who I'm working on, who's helping me, really like frantic idea crazed.
I do that. I call those the sky is falling texts.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
stuff like that.
Because that's what I do when I panic attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I call them in my own head. I call them like eureka texts. Like,
so yours are more positive,
something.
I guess. Yeah, mine are negative.
Yeah. I don't think they're negative because she responds to them positively.
Sure.
Or at least she's just very good at like
covering it.
Covering it. I don't know.
When I have that moment, they're panics. When I'm texting somebody, I'm texting because like literally. So what I was bringing this up is. Since 2014, I moved to New York in 13. Since 2014, every year I sit down around like, because my birthday is December 15th, then it's Christmas, and then there's that like week of nothing. And in that period, I always sit down and I take time and I write. And I'm also very anal. I'm super like, I keep every set I've ever written. I have them all in these boxes. It's really weird, but I'm
like
very
Jerry Seinfeld.
I guess, but I don't know. More like Joan Rivers, if you ever saw that movie. I feel like that's what my life will be.
She's got the card catalog.
Mine's just like Rubbermaid tubs, and I'm never going to look at I never care what I did on June 10th, 2015, but I can go find it if you need me to. But I have them all. But so with my goals, what I do is I start planning out what I want, and then I write them all down in pencil on a piece of paper, and then I like tweak them as the week goes on, and then by January 1st I will have it up on my bulletin board above my desk in our living room, and my wife and I, so it's our apartment with all of our shit, but then there's a corner that is a desk, and I have a bulletin board full of like comedy stuff, and so then up on that bulletin board I always have in the same spot since 2014 my goals, and it's always written in green, and I cross stuff off as I do it with a Sharpie marker and stuff. And then there's long-term goals underneath it, which is like what I want to do, like Conan and like get half hours and stuff.
Yeah.
That's all underneath it. That's a separate list. But so then 2014, I wrote these goals, and I got a good amount of them knocked out. And then 2015, I wrote goals, and I got a good amount of them knocked out. And then 2016, I had like 3/4 of these things knocked out, and I was like, holy crap. And then last year, I literally got all of them, but like 3 things knocked out. And this is like 15, 20 things that I wanted to do. Because when I write something out and put it up on the wall, even if it's subconscious, I walk through my living room, I'm seeing this thing. I'm like, you want to write this pilot? It's like it's staring at me. It's like I have this pilot I want to have done. And then last year, I literally had all but one, or not all but one. I had like all but 3 or 4. But one of them was I never ran an hour. I'd done 40 minutes on the road and stuff, but I'd never done an hour. And I wrote something silly on Facebook about it. And Rebecca from the Creek reached out and was like, do you want to do an hour on New Year's Eve? And I was like, holy shit, yeah. And like, that sounds fun. Like, oh, you did an hour at New Year's Eve at a club in New York? Which I mean, it was not a fun show. Nobody wants to go to a fucking 7 p.m. comedy show on New Year's Eve. But it was like half full, and it was great. And I got to run an hour. So I literally ended 2017 feeling great. Yeah. And I was like, I had achieved so much. I had like fucking 20 things I did that I wanted to do. And then I was doing Sketchfest in January, SF Sketchfest, which was a huge goal of mine. So going into 2018, I was like, I'm not going to write goals this year. I'm going to see what happens. I'm just going to take every week as it comes and see what happens, you know? And that was like my idea, and I was so good on that idea. And then May, and 5 months into this year, I had the worst comedy panic hangover I've ever had. Everything was terrible. I felt I didn't like any of my jokes. Everything was going bad. And I just couldn't handle it. And then I did a set I did a show, and I bombed. And that happens.
Yeah.
But I bombed, and it was at a venue where I was just like, whatever. That, fuck it, it happens. This is just a weird room. And then Sam Ruddy, who's one of my favorite comedians, a great friend, she followed me and just blew the roof off. Just destroyed. And I had this like, it's me. This is my fucking fault.
Right.
And I've never had that feeling. Not since I was brand new at comedy.
Right.
And that night, I had one of those panic attacks. And it was like 3 a.m. in New York. So it's like whatever. It's like midnight or whatever, 11 o'clock in L.A. And I'm texting my buddy Nick Pupo. And I'm like, everything fucking sucks. And he's like, well, what's the problem? And he's like, I have nothing to look for. I'm not achieving nothing. And he's like, well, what about your goals? And I was like, I didn't write any goals. And he's like, well, write goals.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh. So then June 1st, I wrote goals. And first thing I did when I wrote them was realized, well, I've already done so much. I'd performed in Canada this year. I'd done 2 festivals. I had been in like 7 cities. I went to Philly for the first time. It's like, by not writing out this goals and having it in the living room to look at, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
You know what I mean? But and as soon as I started doing that, literally everything picked up. I put together the 2-week tour. I went on the road.
Yeah.
I came back to New York. I've been doing stuff. And it's like, so like my thing for anybody is if you're feeling like you're in a rut, write out a set of goals and look at them and then try to achieve them. Like, fuck, I mean, it literally, I feel like it saved my year. If I would have kept going, I don't know where the fuck I wouldn't be sitting on the couch.
You might have just kept spiraling. I would be recording this in a dumpster somewhere.
For sure, yeah. I definitely wouldn't have felt good enough to come back on your podcast. I know that.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling good, man. I'm glad that you have that system in place. So one thing I also wanted to make sure we covered, and then if there's something we need to discuss, just let me know.
Nothing.
You had talked about how you felt like you're a different person since the last time we talked. In what ways? And then let's go through some of these goals. Maybe we can come up with some.
I feel like I'm the same person. That's kind of dumb, but the touring stuff, which if you have any other thing, I would love to talk. I am such an asshole. That's why I like your podcast, is because I love talking. Like I did Hayden Maxwell's podcast once where you're supposed to talk about a goddamn old-fashioned movie, and we just spent 40 minutes just goofing off talking about comedy and careers and stuff. But that's all
I like listening.
Me too.
To, I like
that's why
listening to
your show's good. That's why I like this show, because I feel like I can actually say this shit.
Oh, well, thank you, man.
So touring, doing these little DIY tours, and I wanted to let people know I'm not making any money. Literally, I posted a video on YouTube and somebody fucking commented, "This guy tours? This is bullshit. This is open mic bullshit." And I was like, kinda, like you're right, I guess, but but like that's learning that. Yeah. It's just like, and maybe I mentioned this on the first episode because this is a thing I've said for a long time, but I feel like comedy is a bag. Did I tell you this last time? Have we talked about this? I feel like every comedian has a bag. You have one-man show. You have that in your bag.
Yes.
All right? I have doing this DIY tours in my bag. Now, you don't have that in your bag, but I have that.
No.
Some people have Conan in their bag, but they might not have do an hour on the road in their bag, And so, like, every comedian has their own bag, and they're filling their own shit in it. And basically, I'm not a different person, but since the last time I did your podcast, my bag has so much more shit in it. Because, like, I know that I can do long sets now. I'm not afraid of doing an hour. Yeah. I'm not afraid of doing a 40-minute set. I'm not afraid of going to a city I've never been to, walking into a room full of comics and just hoping that they'll be okay with me, Right. I also know what it's like when you do a huge, not huge, but like a 300 seat place, I know what that feels like now. I know what it feels like to bomb really hard on a really important show, Like all these things that I have now that I didn't have back then. And I think that's why it feels so different,
Yeah. No, I can definitely relate to some of this. Like, I bombed in Istanbul for 6 of 10 minutes.
Wait, were they in order?
Yes.
Did you crush for a minute? Bomb for 6? 5?
I bombed for 6. I bombed 1 through 6, and like vacuum sucking the air out of the room kind of bombing.
Yeah.
And I was able to close really big in the last 4, telling some stories for things that I was telling on stage for the first time. So I put it in the win column.
Yeah, for sure.
So
you're also doing comedy in Istanbul. Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else we know is doing that,
So,
but Tack ain't done that.
So I don't have the So I don't have the fear of that, but you're right. Talking about the bag, one man show. So where do I want to take my bag? I want to take it to Edinburgh. I want to do that. I want to do
I love that. You were talking about that with somebody, Sam or Chelsea or somebody.
I was talking about it with Sam, and I feel like I'm getting closer to being actually able to do it from like a artistic standpoint and a practical standpoint. And having been in Edinburgh now, I have an idea of what the city's like. So
all this, what do they call libertines? That's what they fucking call everybody there. That's been one of my dreams for years too.
Yeah.
I'm like, we were talking about goals. I never wrote it down because I really hate letting myself down. And so I never wrote it on my long-term goals, but that was what I wanted to do in 2018. Like since I moved to New York, 2018 was my year to do Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And so 2016, I went on the road for the first time. I was like, I can do this. 17, I was like, I really think I can make this work. And then I just didn't pay attention and save enough money. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, fuck, this was the year I was going to do it. And then when Edinburgh came around, and I was like, I wanted to be there. And then I saw all of the people we know that are there. And I'm like, all right. You know, like some friends, like Anders is there, and he's great, and he knows how to do it and stuff.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the people that are doing it are like upper class, you know?
Yeah.
Which is why I love that Anders is doing it, is because I feel like I can suck out whatever information I want from him for it, you know?
Yeah, I have a couple of friends that have done it in different capacities, like Abigail Shaman, who's I think very big at...
Sure. She's big.
She does very well now at Fringe. And then my friend, who's like a performance artist, has done her show there. And then I've got friends who did it like from theater. So I have, and then I also have this idea just from listening, like watching you like do these tours and watching like our friends like grow podcasts. Like we were just talking about Patek. I have the blocks. Like, you remember when you were a kid, that toy where you had the different shaped blocks and you have to fit them in the holes? Well, no.
I know you're talking.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I have the box, and I just am
figuring
out how to sort them. So you could do it in 2019 or 2020.
I feel like
so
2020
this is an attainable
feels a little
thing.
better now.
And I'm thinking about this because I feel like, not saying I feel like after Nanette blew up, a lot more people know the phrase Edinburgh style show.
Sure.
Because I haven't watched it, but
you haven't watched it?
Not yet.
It's fantastic.
No. I hear it's good. I just haven't emotionally been in the place to digest it yet.
And also, I would think since you are, I don't know, I watch it because even though it is stand up, I hate some of the negative opinions I've seen of it. I love it. It is stand up, but it's also structured more like a show. And so I feel like since you do that, maybe it's like when a fucking pilot watches Top Gun, you know? Maybe you might be like, I don't like this part here with this, you know. Thematically, you might have an issue with it that I didn't have because I don't think that way.
Right.
But I still, it's great.
Yeah. And when I think about and when people say an Edinburgh style show, what it means to me is it's a themed hour that is, if they're a comedian, it's probably funny at times. Yeah. And then there's, given my knowledge and time in the storytelling community, there's probably some like real hard stuff in there too.
Yeah, totally.
So I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about applying this model to Patrick Hastie.
Baby, I'm right here.
Yeah, because if we both went and did Fringe, I think that would be so much fun.
It would be great.
So much.
Oh, and that's kind of what you got to do too, is you got to split stuff. I mean, everybody did.
Well, it would keep you sane. It would keep us sane for 3 days.
We were just talking about fucking Bert Kreischer earlier. Him and Patrice did it like in 07 or something, or 06. Mm-hmm. They did Edinburgh together. Kanane and Bronneler did it together one year. And I mean, I don't think they're doing the same shows, but they went at the same time and like stayed in the same, Flomhouse and stuff. Right now, Jessica Michelle Singleton's over there, and she's doing it with like a couple other comics. They're all staying together, and it's like that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I have like this, like here's like we were talking about goals. This is what I want. First off,
let's break it down.
I wanted, and I don't think this is possible, and I'm not ruling this out yet, but I wanted to record an album. I wanted to release an album on April 19th, 2019. But I wanted it to be released by an actual thing, like a label, like a label.
Okay.
And that's because I'm really, like I was saying about like being really anal and dumb about stuff. I put out my first EP on April 19th, 2013, when I was 2 years in. I put out my second one April 19th, 2016, when I was 5 years in.
Yeah.
I think it'd be very cool to put out my third one April 19th, 2018, when I'm 8 years in, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I like the rule of threes. I like all that stuff.
Yeah.
I like the idea of releasing it as an album, and then when you like, if you digitally buy it, you also get my 2 EPs underneath it. Because how fucking cool! Like, who's your favorite comic right now?
Favorite comic right now? I would say probably John Mulaney.
John Mulaney. So you get to see John Mulaney, right? But then you also get, like, you buy his new special. You get his new album, right?
Yeah.
But on that album, you also get 20 minutes from when he was 2 years in, and you also get 10 minutes from when he was 5 years in. How fucking cool would that be?
That would be
right?
very cool.
As a fan of comedy, that's interesting, and you can see the growth and stuff.
Exactly.
And so what I had this idea of, I wanted to record this album because I don't think anybody's going to pay me, and I don't want to pitch. So I wanted to record it myself, high quality, do it, make it sound good, and then just pitch it to like one of the companies or one of the labels.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there's a lot right now. There's like Stand Up Records is always one.
And Comedy Dynamics does that a lot, but I don't have any relationship with anybody. That's the other thing that sucks.
I hear what
Like, I've been in the places like I did Sketchfest and I loved it, and I cannot recommend it enough. Go do San Francisco Sketchfest. But I get in my head sometimes, and I was at a couple parties where I was like, that's the fucking people from Audible. I should go talk to them. But you're in your head, and I'm like, they're talking to this person, and I don't want to. And I already know these two cool people over here, and I am talking to them. So it's like, but like, that's the thing. Like, that's what I wanted to, that's my idea was I wanted to put out an album then. But regardless, I think what I want to do is, I have the album in me. I know it. I know what it is.
Yeah.
I want to do this album. If it comes out April next year, whenever, whatever.
Sure.
But I want to do this album, and then what I want to do is have it out for sale, and then I want to go to Edinburgh and do the next album. So I want to go to Edinburgh, and I'll have, because I already have the threads to whatever the next one is. I know what it is. I know the heart, and I'm storytellery, so I know what I can make it. Yeah, I feel like I can adjust to the Edinburgh really well.
Yeah, you have good anecdotes.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what my next one will be. And then the idea would be, so I'm 10 years in, I come back from Edinburgh, and I've got 2 albums that are good and ready, that are out there for people to buy, because I want to be I want to be famous. I want to be on the Tonight Show, every couple of weeks, and I want to have Comedy Central hours and stuff. But more than anything, I just want to be able to go on the road and make some money, and getting a couple good albums that are good comedy that I'm proud of, that'll help you make the money and get on the road.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you can have it, if you're doing a mostly like maybe 90% different act from the CD.
Sure, and that's the goal.
Absolutely. That was what I wanted. That's very similar to what my plan was. My thought was, before I go to Fringe, before I do Fringe, have a album of my traditional stamp, because I know it can do 30 minutes. Well, that's also a thing
to sell at the Fringe.
Yes,
that's the other idea. I'm sorry, I don't know if I articulated that well.
I got what you were putting out there. And then my other thought was have like a really short EP of 2 of the stories from the show.
Oh, that's cool.
And have that as the flyer.
Yeah, I like that.
Like find a cheap way to CDs in the paper sleeve.
Yeah.
And that's the flyer.
You know where else I want to do? Another dream I have for Edinburgh is I want to go do Glasgow. And I want to do stand-up at the Stand in Glasgow. It's not affiliated with the New York Stand, but there's a club in Glasgow called the Stand.
There's one in Edinburgh also.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
Sure, okay. Well,
it's a great club.
The one in Glasgow is the first place I ever saw stand-up comedy live. And so, when I was like 18. And so I have I just got goosebumps. The idea of going in there and doing stand-up on that stage is like insanity to me, because I was like an 18-year-old kid 6 years before I ever tried stand-up, thinking nothing and dying, like laughing my ass off in that room one night. And the idea of getting to go there and do that room is insane. Like, I've done that. I've had that experience a couple times. So maybe you've had this too, where you get to go play a room that you're like, I fucking used to watch. In Omaha, I've done this a lot. You do a show at a room that I was like, when I was in high school, I used to pay to come see bands I love play this stage. And now I get to do stand-up on the stage. And the other thing is, when you're in the green rooms of those places, like, the stage is one thing. But I'm like, this is the green room that, like, fucking Blink-182 was hanging out in and stuff, It's so wild to me. And that's kind of now where I'm at, because I'm like, we can't control shit. Like,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of bucket listy stuff. It's like I want to go. Whenever I hear about like, there's this place in Houston called The Secret. What's it called? The Secret Group, and it's fantastic. And if you 90% of the time I'm wearing their T-shirt because I love it. And but it's this wonderful venue, and they do music, and they do comedy, and they do festivals, and it's this amazing like magical place in Houston. And I just kept fucking hearing people talk about it. So I went there finally last year, and I got to go do it and perform there and meet everybody. And it's exactly what you want. It's everything I wanted it to be. So that's like my bucket thing now. It's like the first time I did Star Bar in Atlanta. I'm like, it's one of these like storied places. It's like, that's what keeps me going now, because it's not like I can't just be like, well, I got to go to these 5 more cities and then I get to be on TV. It's like, that's not how it works. Or I got to go do these, I get to do this, and then I get paid for next year. It's like, I'm not in that spot. Yeah. But I can emotionally get that by going and doing these 3 things.
Right.
And then naturally that'll also help the long run. But I think that's like a big thing, is like being in control of everything, you know? Like you wanting to do Edinburgh. Me, I honestly, Edinburgh isn't something I think about as much as I think I should, because I'm scared of it. And I'm scared of the work, and I'm especially scared of the money. Like if I had a payout, like if I sold a script that I haven't written, you know what I mean? But like if I sold a script tomorrow and I got paid, $2,000, I would go to Edinburgh in 2019. But I need that money. I need to be able to look at my wife and say, this is what I'm doing and this is why. That's like a big conversation we have a lot. You know?
Yeah. I wonder, I think about that a lot too, because there's the practical side of it as well. You can't just plunge you and your wife into financial ruin.
And already, like, I was saying this earlier, like, I came back from tour last year, and I was like, I can never do that again unless somebody else books it. So this year I did 2 weeks, and then literally 2 days ago, I was like, maybe I'll do 2 months next year. Like, that would be crazy, but if I could do 2 months with a good comic that I respect, I could probably come home with a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about how it's going to ruin my brain or what it's going to do. Like,
right.
It's like because your brain just, you look at, it's like the childbirth thing. It's like when you have a baby, it's terrible, but then women like lose that thing,
Yeah, they forget it. So yeah. I've heard the science on.
Yeah, I feel that a lot.
Yeah, what I have a lot of is, and talking about control, and that's been a big thing I've been talking about lately. Like, I have this whole theory that Starbucks is successful not because they sell great coffee, but because they sell control. You can literally, with maybe like 4 exceptions, tell a barista at Starbucks to make your drink any which way, and they do it.
Yeah.
I used to work there. I know.
Politics-wise, they have a lot of shit that's wrong, but I love Starbucks. When I'm on the road and I'm freaking out, I go to a Starbucks because they're always the same. They always have the same stickers on the door. Yeah, the Wi-Fi automatically connects.
Yeah.
It's like a really warm... It's just like going to a Target. When I really freak out, I'll go to a Target because the same kind of thing.
It's like being on base playing tag, but it's like for your whole life, basically.
Yeah, it's a reset.
I'm familiar with that. With that idea, and
the control. I love that. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And now more so. Like, I'm talking to a lot of people that are, and I've found this way myself. What can I control, and what can I get out of it, and how can I push that? So, talking about what's in my bag with this podcast, I had some luck. I've gotten to interview some people that I'm really big fans of.
Yeah.
So
musicians and stuff like that.
So
awesome.
now I'm not afraid to ask other musicians. And the worst that's going to happen is that I won't get a response.
Yeah, they say no, and then you're like,
cool. And that happens to everything. But
I used to do this thing. This is a perfect example of this. I used to do this thing called the Internet Stand-Up Show. And this is one of those things where I was freaking out one day and I did it. And what it was it was a Tumblr that because I have friends all over the country. So it was a Tumblr, and every month it would be like a stand-up show, but it would just be 7 comics that live in different cities, and I would just do YouTube videos of them. And so it'd be a blog, and it'd be like me being like, you've seen this comic, blah, 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 come in on stage, Rachel Weeks. And then it would just be a video of my friend Rachel. And it was a fun thing, and it like got shared a little bit, but not too bad. And then maybe 3 months in, Tumblr changed up their way they do videos, so it fucking sucked. But I asked Jackie Cation to do it once, and I just sent her a message, and I was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this? I could just use it's like literally it's just a free thing for you. It's like a way to get your name out there and stuff. And she replied back like, no. And I was just like, oh yeah. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh yeah, for sure. And I learned you can just say no without it being a rude thing. You know, she wasn't mean.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I'm like, well, of course not. Why would you want to be tied into this thing that's nothing? You know?
Sure.
But that was the thing that I at the time, like, I mean, it hit me in the right moment and stuff like that. But like, I could see if I was 6 months in and I asked somebody and they say no, I'd be like, oh God, it ruined me. But like now it's like, oh no, that's just something that happens. You know, how often I ask people like, or not even that, but like I'll ask people that are bigger comics that are friends of ours to do our show or to do our podcast, and they're like, oh, I'm on the road. And you're like, yeah, you just got to get good at rejection and stuff.
Yeah. And sometimes like, it's not even like they don't want to do it. It's just like the schedule, and then there's a priority that
and
that
rejection's
happens.
not. I don't mean that necessarily as a negative thing. It's just a no. You know, like
it's not an indictment on you as a person.
Yeah. Most of the time, it's like, you know, it's like, well, I'm in town for 4 days. I'm going to do laundry and this, and I'm going to hang out with my wife, you know, or my boyfriend.
Yeah.
So of course you don't want to come fucking sit in a dumb living room with me in Bushwick for 2 hours, you know?
Right.
It makes sense.
Yeah. No.
I just think being in control, though. Like, I mean, I like that. That's something I was listening to. I don't remember one of the episodes that you were talking. You sounded very like, and maybe it was just how you were that day, but you were like, I don't know if I'll do this stand up and stuff like this, and I don't know. And it's like, you're in fucking control with it. You know what I mean, man? Like, like we can do whatever we want. Like, as long as you're setting your own goals and your own stakes, you're in charge. Like, fuck gatekeepers and fuck like all this stuff. That's what I love about comedy today, especially New York comedy today. Yeah, it's like I'm not answering to anybody. Like I can do what I want, and when I want to leave the city, I leave the city. I'm answering in my personal life. I'm not gonna do something without pissing off my wife or my parents, I guess. But like, I don't have anybody that I have to ask for permission to do something. Yeah. For our shows, there's nobody that I have to run people by. We put people on we want. For our podcast, we do what we want, and we make our money off of the podcast by doing what we want. And it's like, that's what we all should be getting to. You know, that's what it is. And so I'm my own boss. So then I'm in charge of making sure I work. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. There's that sort of and then you. And then there's sort of that little bit of where the anxiety sort of helps fuel that. Yeah. But you know, maybe like pull it back before it destroys you, because I think you're going to do good things. Yeah. And I'm not just saying that because I'm trying to position myself for later on. Fine. But no,
I just, my problem is that sometimes the anxiety takes over and it's good. Yeah. Sometimes the anxiety takes over and it's bad. And that's when I do something like that fucking music project or something like that. Yeah. Or I literally will write 5 pages of a movie treatment that I don't give a shit about. And then the next day I look at it and I'm like, you wasted you stayed up till 2 a.m. last night doing this, you know? Or I'll be on a run where it's like, well, it's not even just always comedy related. It's like, I'm panicked. I'm going to play Madden online for 5 hours tonight. Yeah. And then I get done and it's like, what'd you do? What are you doing? It's like that feeling like sometimes when you like...
Yeah, this is why... I think this is part of why I've gotten into soccer in this not late stage of my life, but
more recently.
I was never a sports guy growing up at all. But then suddenly, in 2014, me and my friend Corey were watching the World Cup, and I was enjoying following it. Yeah, yeah. And it became a thing that I followed that I'm not trying to be. Yeah. Like, I am not trying to become a professional athlete, but I have found that there is a calm with watching the game. And not just, and it doesn't have to be that. There's a calm in having a hobby. Yeah. And what fucking sucks about comedy is comedy can be a hobby for a lot of people. Yeah. And even if a lot of people that treat it like a career will still might think of it as a hobby. Mm-hmm. And so that's why sometimes like there's these perennial or whatever you call them, like permanent open micers, who are they're not building. They're doing the same thing they were doing when I moved here 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and they're not getting any better. They're not getting any worse, but they're not trying to get on bigger stuff. And it's like, oh, those are people who never stopped letting this be a hobby. Like they never pivoted to this being a career choice or an art. Yeah. And so that's why like people make fun of sometimes like when people are like in a bowling league, like not just comics, but like regular people. Like if somebody works in an office and then they're in a bowling league, that's like a thing to be like, fucking bowling. But that's because that's their release. That's what they get to do. Yeah. And so that's why in comedy, like you were like if you use comedy as your career, and also what fucking sucks is comedy's our career. Also, I have a 35-hour a week job too. Yeah.
You have a day job too.
Yeah. And so it's also the release.
Yeah. So soccer is your thing. And then I'll do that with like, I go to movies. I like to go to movies. I like to relax. I like to watch movies. Lately, in the last couple of years, I've been way more into video games. And it's because, I mean, I have friends that don't, if you don't have that, it's so hard to be around you, you know? It's so hard. And I mean, it's not the worst, but like, I'm always on. I like to goof and riff and have fun and stuff like that. But I need to be able to look at somebody in the eyes sometimes and have a moment with them. And sometimes some people aren't that way. They're just comedies their whole goddamn life. And you're like, all right.
Yeah.
Hopefully it works out. And you're not just... Some people are just grind, open mic. And it's like, you got to do something else.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I feel that way too. Like if comedy's your entire thing, then it's almost like this weird sort of you become this own sort of meta commentary on your own life. And
you ever see you'll see one of those people that's great, and you'll see them on a show, like maybe they're not great, but they're a good comic and they're just one of those staples of the open mic scene. And then you'll see them do a show and it's like, fuck, like you've got nothing. You're like, they kind of bomb because they're not ready for a real audience, and then they can't react because they're not ready for a real audience.
Right.
And they're not good enough at comedy because they're thinking about comedy, so they can't even pivot into being a human and like do crowd work or whatever, or realize it, you know?
Right.
And it's always such a shame. And sometimes it's people like I think about a lot, like people I met in 2013 that I was like, I love this person. And now I'm like, ugh, I can't. Not even a bad way, but it's like, I wonder, like I was saying earlier, what happened to them? Or I don't want to be alone in a room with them. I don't want to talk to them, you know? It's very weird.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I'm one of the people that
you're great.
seemingly you're
For
wanting
sure,
to be alone in a room with. So that's good. I guess that also helps in that, like, I'm not threatening, but
sure, yeah. Well, you're very tall.
Yeah, no, I got to do this joke next time I get on stage. Like, I'm very aware of how tall I am. So sometimes if I am accidentally going the exact same place as a woman at night, I'm like, oh damn it.
Yeah. You just lay down flat and try to be as prone as you can.
Yeah, well, I just sort of like I walk far behind. I look away. I look down at the ground, trying to like basically turtle without having to like physically lie on the ground. Like lots of stuff like that. If there's one thing I'm hoping doesn't atrophy is that, like I seriously wish, and this might be a nice button to put this in on the goals thing, because we're going to do Fringe next year. We've got that.
We've got that set up.
I would love. I wish I had a place I could go at least a week, once a week, every other week, and have a quality like 8 minutes to do stuff that I know works, and then also try some new things, so that the panic of when's my next show will kind of doesn't chew at the back of my brain.
Sure.
That's something I wish I had more, because I'm.
Well, you know what the answer to that is?
What's that?
Run a show.
Yeah, I should get my show at another.
Yeah. Because are you still doing? You can use that.
I got taken. My dates got switched around, and I've never gotten another date confirmed.
I know that.
Find it. I might have to.
They had some calendar shit for a month or two that was really weird, where all of a sudden we were getting double. We everything was fine, but we were getting whatever. But because that's what that is. Right now, because of the weekly Sam and I run Tyrannosaurus and Jackknife, I only have I would be much better if I was doing more stuff, but I only do like 4 open mics a week every week. Yeah. And the idea that if you told Patrick in 2014 that, he'd be like, "Oh boy, what a sucker, what an idiot! Moved to New York to do nothing, Right. But like because of the weekly show, and then also like New York. I have a lot of friends that just moved here recently. Yeah. From other scenes. Good comics, really great comics. Yeah. And so I've been talking with this kind of shit about them a lot. And it's like what you do when you move to New York, if you're already a good comic, if you're a baby comic, if you're just like a couple years in, just move to New York, go wherever you want. Let life figure yourself out. Yeah. But if you're a good comic, you've been doing it 5+ years in another scene and you've already got some credits, like festivals or whatever, come to New York. It doesn't matter what open mic it is. It could be any open mic, as long as it's a good comic open mic, like a Pine Box or something like that. Go to it every week for 2 months. The same mic, never skip a week. And if you go to Gideon and Kathy run Fish Bar, go to it every week for 2 months. At the end of 2 months, most comics in New York will know your name at least. Yeah. Start a show as soon as you feel comfortable to do that. Like in the first year, start running a show. only book good comedians. Don't book it. Like, don't. That's a huge thing. Is like New York was a lot of like when I first moved here. I think it was a lot of like you'd see lineups with bad comics on it just because everybody was kind of friends. And I guess maybe that's because everybody only knew bad comics back then. But like, book good comics. You don't have to book somebody just because you hang out with them occasionally.
Right.
Book good comics on your shows. And everything just happens because if you run a cool show, people will like you, and if people like you, then you'll get booked on their stuff. And so it's like a lot of like that kind of stuff. Like it's so. I think living in New York is a lot easier than people make it as a comic. Mm-hmm. Like if I was moving to New York today,
yeah,
I feel like I could I feel like if somebody just took my advice 100%, at the end of the year, they would be so well off in New York, you know? And I can't, sometimes I use that advice. Sometimes that advice doesn't work for me, you know? I don't do any of the shit I say. I don't go to Pine Box every week or whatever, you know?
No, but what you're saying, what you're saying makes sense. And definitely when I had that monthly, I had more of a groove. So I got to
that sucks though if there's like some fucked up situation with it though, but.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think it's just anybody's fault.
Like it's just
it's just a lot of stuff. But just getting that set up, I think will be good. So that'll probably be on my goals for 2019. So let's because I kind of want to like see where, and then we'll check in again later.
I'd love to come back in 2.5 years.
Yeah, why not?
That'd be great.
We'll just keep.
I love it.
This. And I'm looking forward to doing Nostalgic Front in November.
Oh, yeah. We got you on the coming in. We'll have you right when you get back. We were gonna try to get you this Saturday, but it didn't work out. We had.
Oh yeah, no, we
got fucked up.
I'm busy this.
I also
Saturday.
sent.
When I come back, that'll be great.
I just recently sent Patak a message because he's one of those people who like one of our friends that we've been trying to get on forever.
Yeah.
So I texted him on Saturday. I was like, "Hey man, do you want to come do the podcast?" And he's like, "I can't. I'm getting married." He was at his wedding, and I was like, "Oh well, congratulations, buddy."
That's
yeah.
Fine. So one thing, and then we'll be. This will be a good way to close out. Well, maybe we can talk about it.
I'm having a blast. This is one of those things. I wish I could just talk forever on this. I wish I could talk forever, and then eventually there's something useful said in some of it. You know?
I think we've gotten some useful stuff.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to end with: what's going to be on your goal list for 2019?
I started thinking about it already.
Yeah. Other than French, because we already got that set up.
I'll do this. I'll do the same thing. I'll do what I always do. Is I want to do 200 shows and 200 open mics. Since 2015, I haven't made the mics goal. I've been good on shows.
Great.
But that's also because I'm fucking setting up a bunch on the road, and I also run a show and stuff, so it's easier.
Yeah.
But so those will be on there. For something new, I mean, it's one of those things, like, it's always what I want to do, but it's the idea of writing it. If I write it on the year goal, that makes it scary.
Right.
But I've done some things this year that I thought was a scary thing to write down that I've already achieved. I want to do, I think every comic does, but I want to do a TV set. I want to do a late night TV set.
Okay, yeah.
And I have it now. I've just in the last month and a half, I figured it out. And I've run it a couple times in the middle of shows. You know what I mean? Like where you do a show and you're like, I'm going to try this 6. And it works. And so over the next, I kind of have like this get out of jail free for between now and the end of the year, where I'm going to work on trying to get that tape. And then if I get the tape of that set clean the way I want, then everything will go into effect of 2018 or 2019. I write that on my goal set, do a late night set, and then I start figuring out who do I talk to?
Yeah.
Because I don't have anybody. I don't have any reps or agents or anything. So it's like, who do I talk to make this happen? Because that would be, I mean, and again, I want to do it because I want the feather in my cap, but I want to do it because there's so many places I've emailed over the last couple of years that didn't write back because my best credit is a nice festival, you know? Yeah. But if I had Seth Meyers or Conan or Camp Fallon or something, like that would push you over, you know?
Totally.
I have friends who've been in bad movies who get to headline because they have these great credits, you know? Great friends. I'm not saying that. And I don't even mean bad movies, but they just are in a movie and so then they get to headline for it, you know?
No, yeah. I hear.
And that's what I tweeted once. I can't wait to milk whatever bullshit TV credit I get. I can't wait to milk it for everything it has. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to use it so hard, whatever stupid show I get on, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm going to milk your credit to open for
sure.
You.
Exactly. Oh, boy. I just want somebody I'm friends with to get famous. That's the whole thing, you know? I will ride coattails so hard.
Well,
what are you going to do? What's one of your goals for next year? We got Edinburgh.
Got Edinburgh. I want to put out a 30-minute album.
Do it.
I want to figure out, get the venue, get the equipment, do it myself because I can edit audio, I can
for
record
sure.
audio. So I feel like I have that. And I want to get my goal is for the rest of the year is to finish the outline of my screenplay, and then I want a first draft done by 2019.
Nice.
That's
I love it.
my plan. And then I just want to get as many of my heroes or people I admire on this podcast.
Sure. Perfect. Just never give up. Always move forward. And also there's a quote by Kurt Vonnegut, I think it is. That's like, if this isn't nice, or no. Take a minute to sit and look. If this isn't nice, then I don't know what is. You know what I mean? Do you know this quote? Fuck, I can't think of it exactly, but it's basically like, always look. You're like this. I'm like this. We're always looking to the next thing, but sometimes take a moment and just look around and be like, fuck, I'm doing this. This is really fun.
Yeah.
You know? A friend of mine just headlined a club for the first time, and he was very nervous about it, and then he got to do it, and it went great. And I was just like, yeah, man, you're really good at this. And they were doing it, but because you spend so much time, and then as soon as it's over, I've done a couple things this year that I never thought I would do.
Yeah.
And like fucking 2 days later, I'm back to like, what are we doing? What's next? You know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, sometimes like, I'm 100% goal oriented. Let's do these goals. But also every once in a while, you got to just be like, fuck, we did it. You know, when you do an episode you love, you put it out, you watch the listens happen. Drink that in sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's very important, especially for mental health. It's important, you know?
Yeah. Just knowing that you are accomplishing something and you will accomplish more. So, dude, I'm inspired after this conversation.
Me too. Yeah, I feel good.
Dude, thank you for coming back on.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to when we record your show in November.
Thank you. I'm excited. You're going to be great. The Nostalgic Front. Go listen to it, idiots.
Yes. Where is the Nostalgic Front?
The Nostalgic Front. Nostalgic Front. It's on everything. Podomatic, Spotify, all that kind of shit. Stitcher. Go listen to it.
Excellent. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, you will.
Every time I talk to Pat, I get excited about creating and the things I want to create because he's a very driven guy. He's manic like I am. Also, when you get like super excited, so we both kind of talk a lot about Fringe, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in that episode. So I'm very much focused on making that happen in 2019. So thank you guys very much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Tell friends, share the show around. I greatly appreciate it. And if you want to support me in any other ways, I'm on Twitter at @ComicWillCarey. And if you want me to come and perform in your city, you can send me a link to through my website, willcareyisfunny.com, or on Twitter at @ComicWillCarey. Let's make it happen. Now is the time to make things happen, folks. And I think about it a lot, that 2019 will be the year I have something solid and tangible that I can show to people from 11 years in stand-up. So thank you guys very much for listening, as always. Tell your friends, and then we'll see you next week between awesome and disaster. Take care, everybody.